Hey guys, Jay at Broader Performance here again, continuing on with this 4R70W and the solenoid pressure and neutral and in first and all that stuff. Okay, so what I've got here, and I want to explain this to you. You think, well, I don't know what this guy's talking about, or maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about. So let's take a look at it. So what we got, if you look here, I'm going to point to it. This is a solenoid pressure regulator valve, which is what I keep referring to. This is the valve in the schematic. And this purple, you can see these passages are colored purple. This is the regulated solenoid pressure, which runs much less pressure than what line pressure is. And if you look at here, here's your two shift solenoids, SS1, SS2, that just means shift solenoid 1, shift solenoid 2. So there's basically two shift solenoids in this unit. And Ford kind of cheaped out on this thing. They really, in my opinion, should have had three solenoids, but it would have killed them to spend that extra dollar. But I get it, when you make millions of something, it adds up. And for most part, these units really weren't a problem, I guess. And I guess as they get older now, you start to see this more. And I think a lot more people have this issue and don't really realize it because they don't know what it is. It causes a few different things, and you know, it's just one of those things where, well, yeah, it's acting goofy, but I don't really know why. But this is most likely why. I don't really see much else go wrong with these, honestly. So anyways, in this circuit here, this is, and I'll show you here up at the top here, first gear operation. It gives a year range. Doesn't matter. This will go up to the newer ones too. This really schematic hadn't changed very much. They've messed with accumulation and things like that, but nothing real important. So if you got a newer one or whatever year you're working on, this all applies. This circuit is all the same. They didn't improve it or change it. So anyways, so what happens is it shows this solenoid SS1 as being on. Okay, so we have power there, and these solenoids are what we say normally open, and then when they're on, they actually close. So that means they no longer allow the oil to vent through the solenoid. So SS1 is on, and what this does, it shifts us into first gear. Now, if you look, this is the 1-2 shift valve. So that oil goes to the base of this valve, and there's a spring in here where I'm pointing to, and it moves this valve upward. So that's one of the functions it performs. That's not an issue. Here's where it gets weird. So this 3/4 shift valve I explained before, this is what knocks out the forward clutch to shift into overdrive. And what happens here, see, we've got oil going to the base of it. If this pressure is too great, it will stroke the valve. If you'll notice in here, the valve is all the way at the bottom of the bore. And this is correct. This is the way the valve should be in first gear. Now, the way this valve strokes is, if you see up here, SS2, there's another passage that's got no oil in it right now. Both of these passages having oil work both sides of the valve. They work on the larger portion here and then on the smaller portion here. When you have oil in both these locations, then this valve will stroke. So that will happen only when both solenoids are on. So the way this works is, in first gear, we've got oil on the base. And then second gear, there's no oil at all. And then third gear, SS2 comes on, and then you'll have oil just here and not here. Well, if this pressure, this purple line here, this purple pressure, which is your solenoid regulator pressure, if that is too high, you'll only need one solenoid on to stroke this valve, and that causes problems. Basically, like I keep telling you, the forward clutch drops off. Sometimes it doesn't even drop off 100%. I've actually seen this where, you're watching the pressure gauge in that circuit, and it won't be zero, it won't be whatever line is, it'll be much lower. Like, say, if line is at 150 at that moment, you'll have 40 pounds in the forward clutch. And when you're driving the car, you won't really notice this, but if it's a performance application, or something with power, or if you're heavy into the throttle, that clutch is going to slip. And it's very common when you tear these units down to see the forward clutch burnt up, and this is why. And this can be even, you're not really noticing a neutral drop. This is what you'll see if you're looking at the gauges. And most builders and things, they're not going to drive this with a pressure gauge in the forward port. There is a forward port on the case, and if you're a builder, use that port. I always do when I dyno. Get in this habit if you want to make sure these are right. This is really the port you got to watch for. You should have no oil in forward, only in fourth gear. It should have oil in first, second, and third, and it should be pretty damn close to line pressure. If it's low or nothing, you got an issue, and this is a solenoid pressure regulation issue. So I just wanted to show you that on the schematic so it makes a little bit more sense as to what I'm talking about here, and you have a better shot of recognizing this problem and even going about fixing it. So I'm still getting set up. I'm going to set this up on the valve body dyno in another video. And so here's what I'm doing here so you can see this. I made this little deal. It's nothing fancy. But this has got a screw here, so I'm basically going to be able to adjust the pressure on the fly for this solenoid regulator. And so we're going to see this work on the dyno. We're going to see I'm going to intentionally create the problem, and maybe I'm kind of hoping this valve body has the problem, so you guys can see it firsthand. Many of them do. And like I said, years ago, all these fixes on the market and things, sometimes work, and most of the time really didn't. And I would have to just keep doing a different valve body, honestly, years ago, before I really understood what was happening. And I knew it was happening, and I just didn't know why. Just everybody says, well, the valve sticks. Yeah, but when the valve is super loose in the bore and there's just no way it's going to stick, and the oil's clean, there's something else happening here. And this is what I've learned. And, obsessing over it sticks. Well, there's more to it. And I know I keep saying this, and I'm going to show you this. But basically, the more to it is that the pressure is just off. And sometimes, you have varying line pressure, and also line pressure will dip and spike when shifts occur and things. So all these things happening in the unit, this solenoid regulator, like I've told you, the pressure has got to be precise. Like line pressure, for example, that can bump up and down 20, 30 pounds up and down, and it's not really going to hurt anything. But this thing here, man, you got a 5-pound variance in it, you're having problems. It's stroking that 3/4 valve, or maybe not stroking the 3/4 valve when it's supposed to. And it's got to be much more precise. And this is really what the issue is. And, with line pressure varying and shifts happening, like I said, if it dips or spikes, or, maybe it's just all around too high, maybe when the unit gets warm. A lot of times I'll realize that, the unit will work great when it's cold, and then it warms up, the oil changes a bit, and the valves change a bit, and the springs, everything gets affected by the temperature. And then this pressure just the pressure just changes. It doesn't necessarily, the valve isn't necessarily sticking, the pressure is just changing, and it's changing enough where when we flick on our SS1 solenoid for first gear, it just go ahead and, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and stroke this 3/4 valve for you. Let's just do it now kind of thing. And not going to work. So this pressure's got to be precise. So we're going to play with it. I'm going to kind of see, maybe varying this pressure, maybe intentionally make it on the low side. How low can we go before it no longer will stroke? You know, you've got this valve here to think about. This is your 1, 2, and 2, 3 shift valve. This valve here, it's a 2-section valve. This also has to stroke as well. So if we just go ahead and really drop pressure on this, hey, let's just cut some of the spring off and drop it, and we know we'll never stroke that 3/4 valve when we're not supposed to. Well, the problem with doing that is the damn 1, 2, or 2, 3 shift valve may not stroke. And that may make it fall in and out of gear. So again, we can't be too low, we can't be too high. It's ridiculously precise. And again, I don't like this about the unit. But surprisingly, yeah, I've told you I've had a lot of problems with it, but the problems are not in the field. The problems are here at the shop, trying to get them to work properly before I ship it to the customer. And that's really where the problems are. I count on one hand the number of problems I've had in the field. Less than one hand. Been very lucky. And but, I also take a lot of time and care to diagnose this problem before it goes out. I'm very aware of it, very conscious of it. Like I say, I put a pressure gauge on that forward port, and I watch that like a hawk when I'm dyno testing it. And if I see any goofiness there, that unit does not go to the customer. And that really helps the success rate in the field. And so I do want you to know that. But if you're a builder and you're not doing this, I recommend you do it. It's pretty important. So I'm going to end this video here. Next video, we're going to actually get on the dyno and actually do something and watch this, watch this in the field. We're going to, watch an actual, how this regulates and what it's actually doing. So that'll be the fun part. So please watch the next video.